Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, HR Passion Guy, and this is Passion Fridays. It's another installment of Passion Fridays where we promise to bring you things we're passionate about, passionate people, passionate topics. And so today, we're trying to gear up for a surprise of a recent retirement. We may be having an epic fail, but I'm going to find out whether or not we actually do. So drop in where the temperature is like where you are. I see a phone joining us, but I don't see. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see a face. Maybe I will. Right. Let's make sure we're all set with this. Hello. Where the temperature is like where you are. That's Roger Williams. We're actually live, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Holmes, how are you?
Roger Williams from where do you work, sir?
U.S. Foods.
U.S. Foods, Human Resources business partner there at U.S. Foods, and we are awaiting our honoree. I hope she didn't. I hope this is not an epic fail. She has not joined us as well, but I'm just going to look across platforms. There are two folks that have joined us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. I hope you will click share and tag some folks to join us. I'm going to take a quick look on Facebook. And if you just drop in the comments where you are and what the temperature is like where you are, we're always curious to know that here on Passion Fridays. So drop that in the comments, and I'm going to await um, our honoree who doesn't know that she's our honoree. So what a passionate surprise that will be. We will be surprised if she doesn't show up. What a passionate surprise that will be. While we're waiting, Roger, you used to be employed with the city of Detroit. For how many years were you with the city of Detroit?
12 years. I was there from 2000 to 2012. Do you hear me, Marcus? You're muted. You're muted.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Connection challenges. Got to work on this Wi-Fi and wired in. So Roger, you started with this. How many years have you worked? Did you
12
work
years. 12. Yep.
12 years. And
Yep.
what brought you to public service?
Ah, That's a good question.
Okay.
I just knew the city at the time. City was a great place to work. It really was.
Okay.
It still is a great place to work, but it was a great place that back then.
Okay. And so how did you know it was a great place to work? What led you there? Other people told you it was a great place to work?
It was other people talked about the city, in particular legendary benefits and the things that came along with being a part of the city workforce. So that was a big pull for me.
Okay. And what would you say was one of the, if not the highlights of your working in public service?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm no longer in public service, but I missed the camaraderie. I missed particularly in HR. I missed being a part of a team. You know, the HR team was like it was like you were actually going to war sometimes with some of the changes and some of the things we encountered in the field. So I miss the fellowship and connection I developed with a lot of people throughout the years. I do. I miss that.
Okay. Reginald Jenkins is joining us. And again, I'm hoping that our honoree will be joining us. It will be not as great a show if our honoree doesn't join us, especially since she is totally unaware that this is going to be live. As a matter of fact, she thinks that she's just having a conversation with me because I didn't get to see her before she retired. And so Reginald Jenkins has joined us. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I want to make sure you know that we're live, just so that you know. Anything that you used in the court of live can be used against us.
Right.
So I asked, now I think your title is what, Second Deputy Commissioner? Is that your title?
Yes.
Congratulations. You always been the man, but you're the man now, right? You got a HR presence in the commissioner's office over there. So we're pretty proud to hear that.
Thank you.
Roger and I, as you know, we used to service that department. So we're happy that there's an HR person in the commissioner's office. But I asked Roger, and I'll ask you, what led you to public service? First, how many years have you been with the city?
Off and on, I've been with the city approximately 22 years, right at 22 years.
22 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And what brought you to public service?
Right out of college, I guess. Those were some jobs that were available, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied with the city initially. That was my first job out of college, and had bounced around. I worked for the county for a while, worked for the state,
Mm-hmm.
and back to the city. So I don't know. I just enjoy, I guess, public service and working in that realm.
Okay. And what was that first position? What did you first hold?
First, I was in elections as a typist.
Okay. And so from typist to second deputy, that you ought to write a book. I mean, the stories that you could probably tell. You and Roger could write some good pieces about public service. You ought to think about that. And so what is the most fulfilling at your tenure is continuing to run, but what's the most fulfilling or standout experience that you've had in public service?
Wow. I guess just helping people, in HR, LR, just helping people along their journey, their work journey, from the standpoint where I could, just to be of assistance.
Okay. And you also, I know you hadn't planned to be interviewed, but I'm trying to get Tammy in and she hasn't arrived. And so, because you've held a number of different roles, employee services, labor relations, I mean, all the gamut.
Right.
Any of the work that you found more interesting than other work?
I find labor, I find contract negotiations the most interesting.
Okay.
So labor, contract negotiations, arbitration hearings.
Okay. And you also teach that, right? You're also an instructor in labor relations?
Correct. The labor
Okay.
labor studies at Wayne State.
That's awesome. And so people, I'm sure you use real life case studies? Are you able to do that from your own arsenal, are you able to use real life case studies in the lessons?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And what is then important for you to share with students and people who might want to come behind you in labor relations? What stands out that you share with them?
One of the most common questions that come up or concerns that they have is how to get into the field. And it's not the same as when I came in. I was able to come in as entry level into labor relations. And most employers do not hire at entry level anymore. It's generally, you have to have some type of experience.
Yeah.
So I try to guide students to, if possible, to intern. And that way they can start gaining some experience. And then sometimes I explain, and then I have students who are at a higher level in their career, but they still want to get into labor relations. And if need be, they may have to step down to get that experience at a lower level so they can rise back up within labor relations if that's what they choose.
Yeah, probably Reggie and Roger. The number three consideration that happens in my inbox on LinkedIn, people are looking for work and they're saying, how do I get into HR? And I'm always telling them people are looking for people with experience, which again, underscores what you're saying. People aren't as apt to train people and give people an opportunity to develop. So what would either of you suggest to people who want to foray into human resources or labor relations and they don't have the experience? What would you say to them? They've been working in some field, they've been impacted by the pandemic, they're trying to shift and get into HR. Maybe they went back to school for HR, labor relations, industrial relations, but they don't have the experience. What would you advise them to do about cutting into this field?
Well, you mentioned it, but definitely the education for labor, from the labor standpoint, that definitely education. So if you have an undergrad degree in another field, then there's always I have to plug Wayne State, but we have the Masters of Labor and Employment Relations degree that you can go after. And that way you can start getting your foot in the door with that aspect.
Okay. Roger, anything to add to that?
I agree with Reggie. Besides getting the education, you may have to look for any opportunity to volunteer to get some exposure to some segment in HR. Reggie talked about labor relations. I focused most of my HR career was just in the generalist field, so that encompassed a lot of different areas, training. So I say just be patient. Try to look for opportunities where you can get those cross-functional experiences and put that on your resume, that I've worked with people, I've worked in training, those type of skills that will look attractive to an employer that can, that might want to bring you on and work with you.
Okay, thank you both. And so while we're still waiting for Tammy to get here, and I'm trying to reach out to get her in the room, we can talk a little bit about her. Here's Rodney Bellamy. See, everybody's coming but Tammy. It would be her party and she's not here. What are some of the other stories that you might share with us about public service? Any situation that stands out that you can share? I know, you might not be able to tell names of the story, but any story that you might share. Thank you, Rodney Bellamy, for joining us.
Hey, Rodney.
How you doing, Mr. Bellamy?
How y'all doing?
Good. Great to have you. I was just asking these gentlemen about some special story from their city arsenal of stories, and I'm sure you can add to that, having played different roles there in public service. So thank you for coming. We're waiting for Tammy to come. It's supposed to be a surprise, and maybe she's surprising us. So we'll find out in a minute. But before they give us those stories, Rodney, tell us a little bit, how many years have you worked in public service over the years?
Wow. Let's see. I worked for the city of Detroit for 15 years.
Wow.
Since then, about 15 years. 13 years in healthcare hospital systems. I forgot my 2 years in public safety.
Okay.
And let's see, 2 years in 3 years in universities.
Okay.
Yep.
And did you do did you serve as an arbiter as well?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I did work on the side as an arbitrator and as a mediator as well.
Okay. All right. So a lot of work. Any stories from your public service that stand out to you? What was the most rewarding experience in public service?
Oh, the most rewarding. One of the stories I like to tell a lot was, it was a disciplinary case back in the old days of zero tolerance, when we said zero tolerance meant you automatically get terminated.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, I had to argue with my leadership team that zero tolerance should mean taking the appropriate action, not just automatic termination. And this was a case of 2 plumbers who got fired for fighting. And the management said they both should get fired. I'm like, yeah, but the surveillance shows one was attacking the other and the other was defending himself, and nobody would buy into it. and it took a while to get them to see the light. But in the end, the appropriate person got terminated, and the one who was defending himself got to keep his job. I was always proud of that moment.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I probably could talk for days and days with you and Reggie and Roger about zero tolerance policies. I see Renee Wright has joined
Sure.
us, and the theorems that people might have around what zero tolerance means. We might have to have you all back to have that discussion. That would be interesting.
Sure.
Otis Gatson has joined us, and Renee Wright. Otis and Renee, I think maybe Tammy is duping us. She's supposed to be surprised. We might be being surprised. So Otis, I might need you to give her a call. I think she might be catching on, because I was calling her and saying, no, let's just get on Zoom. And she's like, on Zoom. So we're trying to surprise her. So Renee Wright, I see your picture. I don't know if that means that you're not going to show us your face. I'm going to look at the comments on LinkedIn. Kim Wagner is there. She says, start as a smaller company, at a smaller company, expand your generalist functions experience. Okay, she's giving some guidance on how you might foray into human resources. And so I'm doubling back to Reggie and Roger about a story similar to what Rodney has provided to us, maybe of a story that's happened in your public service that you want to share. But just before I do that, I'm gonna give you a second to think a little longer, because I know you hadn't planned to be interviewed. Rodney, what advice would you give people? I know you also do some work with NAAA HR here locally, as well as where out east. So when people come to you and say they want to cut into the HR field, what information do you provide to them?
The first thing I say to them is, it's not easy. Don't think it's going to be an easy ride to get into HR, because organizations look for the HR people that can help them stay out of legal trouble. And they don't typically rely on brand new graduates. You really have to be able to bring something to the table to show that you would be a reliable candidate. It's not impossible, but they look for the people who can demonstrate to them that they can keep them out of legal trouble, and hopefully make the right type of decisions for them.
Thank you for that. Dwayne Yule has joined us. Now you're in the comments, Dwayne. You're supposed to be in the room, but okay, we're gonna work at you. All right, Otis, see if you can get Tammy, if you can coax her better. You're a close friend with her, and maybe she will come that way. Roger or Reggie, what examples or stories could you share with us from your public service experience? One story that stands out to you.
Go ahead, Reg.
They're both waiting on the other.
I'll let Reggie go.
I'm still thinking.
You're still thinking, okay. Roger, you still thinking, or you're trying to say, now which one could I say that people won't know?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I can say. You know, I can't think of anything right now, Mark, because there's a lot of experiences, but I'm trying to filter, see what I can and can't say.
Okay.
Yeah, filtering is the key.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm working at my filter continuously. I am, but I can think of one story, and I'll even use a story where Reggie may or may not remember. We were at the table. I say the table, the big table is when we're negotiating or there's some contentious issue, and this was around shift and location. And Reggie always sits back. He reminds me in that regard of Barbara Wise Johnson. Maybe he got that from her, I don't know, but he just sits back in the cut. And I'm just going. And there are 12 or 13 other union presidents on the other side. And I'm going. And Reggie says, caucus. I don't know if you remember this.
No.
And I look at him like, I'm going. And he was like, caucus. And we go out, he was like, let's just listen to what they have to say. We really don't have to speak. And I'm wired by this point. I want to just say, we spent all of the weekend working on the shift and location, and they just had, every time it was a different issue with shift and location, we had to go back and redo it. It was just cumbersome. And he said, just sometimes just hear what they're going to say. We're probably not going to agree with what they're saying, but we'll just. And I learned from that, even though I still don't sit back all the time, Reggie, I must admit, I learned from that. You can just lay in the cut sometimes, even though you have so much that you want to advance. Sometimes people actually don't care all of the energies and efforts you put in to do things to make it better for the employees, because at the end of the day, it's about the workforce and not about us, really. Right. But, sometimes you have to choose when it's important to you to share all of the information that you need to share. And so I learned in that lesson not to do that as often. I won't promise that I won't do it, but not as often. And so sometimes I would just do it outside. We'd have dinner. I'd invite Mel Brapson for barbecue. And if I put food in his stomach, I could get just about anything out of Mel Brapson. So that's my story, names included. Did that give you some time to think about something?
I'll say something. I remember we had, and I think Renee was a part of this, Ms. Wright. We always had contentious discussions with the Teamsters, Floyd Ware. And although he was good at heart, he always gave us a hard time when it came to certain issues. But I do remember him one time, Renee, he invited us to go out to lunch. He took us to, I think it was one of the casinos, the buffet they had. Was a really nice gesture. We had a chance to sit down and talk and see him in a different light. And we didn't really get into, union labor. We just talked about life and changes in the city and how things were going. So I never forget having that kind of exchange with him. And I think Renee was there that came with us that particular day. But that's one of the experiences I do remember having, which was cool. Because those type of relationships don't always extend with the union outside of, the labor room.
Right.
I'm looking at the comments. Kimberly Wagner has great comments. She's talking about 10 speed and big wheel. Yes, I could share that example. I could, but you would have to say it in your own voice. So that means you have to come. I'll send you the link. Hopefully we're going to get Tammy in here at some point, because I think Tammy has 34 years, if I'm not mistaken. So Let me talk a little bit about tenure. When I started with the city, I remember Roger and Reggie, because we meet bi-weekly with all of the consultants, and they're laid back brothers. I'm not as laid back as them. So I thought, I don't know about this place. I'm gonna give it 5 years. That was my plan. I'm only gonna stay 5 years. And a wise woman named Gail Bradham said, "Oh, Mr. Holmes, you're gonna be here longer than 5 years, I assure you." She said, "Do you want to wager on this?" And I didn't wager. And after about 6 years, I was like, it's getting tough. There's been cuts and some layoffs going on. Maybe I'll stay another year. Here I am, 17 years. I had never imagined that I would be with the city 17 years. And most times, as Roger said at the beginning, it's because of the relationships that I have that keep me going, and my love for the work. I really do love people and process and passion. Those are the three things that are my loves. And so that's what kept me here. Reggie having 22, Roger, you stayed for 12. Rodney, you've been in and out of and around the city. And these days, millennials don't want to stay 2 or 3. So what was the lure about the tenure that made you stay? Roger said it was great benefits to start, and we could have a lot of discussions as the before and after of benefits, but what's the lure? What made you stay the amount of time that you did?
For me, it was relationships. Go ahead. Yeah, it was the relationships. I started out working under Dwayne, with Dwayne and with Tammy, Elaine, the late Elaine, and so it was a good experience. My foray into the city and to HR was under the tutelage of Dwayne. I had it was a wonderful experience with them over in the health department, Herman Kiefer. We had quite a bit of a growth and experience we went through together. So that kind of gave me that relationship that helped me grow as an HR professional, being around those Dwayne and Tammy and Elaine and some of the staff that was over there at the time. So that was it for me. It was relational, very relational.
Okay.
I would say it was the knowledge, especially in labor relations, have the opportunity to touch just about every department in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And learn about their operations, and going over to DDOT, learning about all the bus driving operations, going out to water, to the sewage plant, learning about how they do work and how all of that works. At fire, learning about that, police. So just gaining a lot of knowledge about how things operate in the city.
Mm-hmm.
That was very very intriguing to me.
Mhm. And Rodney?
You know what? As I was listening to Reggie, I just realized I never had a chance to work at fire. I need to come back just so I can get some fire experience because I was at water, DDOT, police, all those areas. And yeah, I definitely agree. It was the learning experience. Yeah, being in labor. Well, for me, I was in HR, but all of my experience was always employee labor relations, and I had the greatest learning experiences. That when I did leave the city, one thing I learned was that everyone was so amazed at the breadth of knowledge that I brought with me. And that was in my early years. And even still now, you know, when I start at new organizations and they ask about, how would you deal with the situation? There's almost nothing I haven't dealt with. And the majority of that experience came from when I was working for the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a little work at water, not very much. I never did any work with police, but fire, I'm not sure I want to go. Now that Reggie's there, I might want to go back, but I don't know. I had a time with fire. I love our firefighters. I love public safety, but I did learn a lot. I'll put it that way.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Kimberly Hall Wagner has joined us, and I know she's going to show her face. She's not going to do like Otis, because Otis, I can't see your face, and Kimberly, I can't see your face.
All right. Good afternoon. I wasn't prepared to be invited, and so I'm sorry, but I'm here.
Sorry. It's a surprise to Tammy, and it appears like she's surprising us, but we can hear your voice. It'd be great to see your face, but I understand if you won't show us your face. I won't beg you and implore too much. I'll just ask one more time if you could show us your face. But Kimberly Hall Wagner, attorney extraordinaire, how many years have you been with the city of Detroit?
19 years.
19 years. So what is the lure of this tenure? I mean, you've been with the city 19 years. Why'd you stay so long? Not that that's a bad thing. I think staying is a good thing.
I'm actually having fun in a weird, twisted way. What I love about the city, number one, living here and working here, it's a dynamic that you don't often get, seeing the fruits of some of the things that you lead or work on. That's just really a gift for me. But what I love about the city most of all as an employer is that I think Rodney hinted to it. Oh, you hear the cars going down the street. Okay. You have the opportunity to work in many different industries almost, so I started off in the law department. I went to HR, then I became the lead in the human rights department. So I just love the fact that it feels like I've been on, 3 or 4 different jobs with different employers, but in fact, it's been the city. So that's the part I love is the ability to kind of, go different places, learn new things. And like Roger said earlier, it's definitely the camaraderie. It's something special about folks who love to serve other people. I think we have a good time doing it, and it's just really it's almost a ministry, just trying to really support and serve folks. So it's fun for me. I love it.
You definitely have a servant leadership style, so I could see that for you. Absolutely. Mitch Raymond, Kimberly, that's what I loved about economic development consulting. All right, I'm just reading the comments from LinkedIn as we go. And so Kimberly, everybody shared a story. I know you were saying about the 10-speed and big wheel, but I'm sure you have another story besides that one that you might want to share with us about an experience with the city that stands out for you.
Oh, Marcus, there's so many. Oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
I don't have one right now without pulling you into some of them. I will say this. I will say the most I've learned a lot about myself. And one of the things, since we're on a labor relations theme, it seems, was learning how to work with the union. As an attorney, I'm used to defending cases and protecting my client, which in that case was the city, and then transitioning over to HR is a little different position. And so I would find myself being a little bit aggressive in defending some actions that maybe I should have taken a more neutral role on. And the arbitrator every now and then would kind of call me out on it. And I remember, what's her name? It was a pretty contentious meeting with with Lehman Wilson, the infamous Lehman Wilson. And I can't remember the other leader from AFSCME. His name escapes me at this time, but I will never forget the arbitrator, Linda Ashford, said, "Ms. Hall, have you had nails for breakfast?" And I said, wow, I guess I'm a little too aggressive today. And so I learned, a lot about myself and how to really grow and mature in defending, our employees and the city. I also remember sitting next to you, Marcus, one time in a arbitration, I believe it was, and you made this comment. You said, I'm on a 10 speed and you guys are on a big wheel. And it was just, the room just erupted in laughter because it was true. Like you said, you were a mile away and everybody was still trying to catch up. But even still, we were able, as Roger said, to leave that environment, go and break bread, have lunch, support each other out of work. And I just don't know that you really can find that too many places these days. So those are my memories.
Thank you. I knew you were going to share it anyway. Thank you so much. Roger, I know you, before you sign off, so in case Tammy doesn't get on here shortly, at least give your shout out to her. Maybe she can watch it. She, I believe, has 34 years. Give your shout out from working with Tammy Bell and her congratulations.
Yeah, it was a pleasure working with her. Like I said, that was my first entry into city HR. It was her and Dwayne and the late Elaine, and so I really enjoyed working with her. She kind of gave me because she had far more time when I got in terms of the lay of the land at the health department and some of the other departments and the HR structure. So I appreciated it. I wish her the best. Fortunately, I'm sorry I can't talk to her directly, but wish her the best. And to the rest of you all, Rodney, Reggie, Kim Hall Wagner, pleasure seeing and talking to you all again.
You too.
Mr. Holmes, I will talk to you all later. You all take care. Have a wonderful weekend, okay?
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate you coming. And I'm sure Tammy will appreciate it too, whenever we get her in the room.
Right. Okay.
Otis Gatson.
I have to get off also. I'm sorry,
yes, sir.
Marcus.
Okay. Thank you, Second Deputy Commissioner. We're proud of you.
All right. Thanks. But Tammy, enjoy your retirement. Proud of you.
All right. Otis Gatson. I see that you. Yes, sir. I'm trying to get Tammy on. I don't know exactly where she is. Maybe I know she had a doctor's appointment and she was en route from there. Tell us a little bit about, can we see you and Kim and no faces?
I'm at work, so I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay, there you go. All right. You're on lunch. That's what this is.
Yes.
This is our lunch break.
Huh? No, I'm not on lunch yet.
Thanks for sharing. So, Otis Gatson, how long were you with the city?
19 years.
19 years. That's a long time. And what made you stay 19 years?
The people, actually. Just the different relationships I've had throughout the city, primarily at DDOT, the ones I built when I was in the mayor's office, human rights, just those relationships, being around people.
Okay. And speaking of those relationships, you have a great and close relationship with Tammy Bell. Tell us a little bit about working with her over the years.
Tammy, I love my Tammy. We met back in 2005, I believe it was. And just from the first day, she came up to the office. It's a long story. Once you get the chance to talk to her, she'll tell you. It was like, who are you? What are you doing here? And from there, we really just hit it off. I was teaching, like on our lunch break, I would teach line dance. Everybody knows Tammy teaching hustles. So she showed me one dance. I fell in love with it. It was something new, something refreshing, and we just hit it off. We became best friends since then.
I don't know. Did you hit your mute? Oh, okay.
No, I didn't. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, but working with Tammy was great. I learned a lot in HR and payroll as well. I used to hang around them quite a bit, even when I first started with the city in 2000. I know if y'all know Aletha Johnson, some of those people, what was her name? Jan Perkins, Marcella, you know, working with all of them. Just a lot of wealth of knowledge and just being around them. They were welcoming, you know, they were willing to teach me, show me things, you know. That's how I learned a lot with HR. And just from there, that's how those relationships built.
And what would you say is one of your most rewarding experiences with the city of Detroit? Can you bring anything to memory?
Like everybody says, it's so many of them. I think when I met Tammy, that was a great thing for me. Going dealing with things throughout the city. I had somebody I could come to personally, but not just her. You know, even some of the other people that were on the show today. I think when back in 2003, my greatest accomplishment is learning how to become a professional. You know, further in my career as a professional throughout the city. Christine Granger was the director at DDOT at the time. So her training me and exposing me to some of the things that she did, taking me to meetings and stuff, you know, that's how I got promoted into the mayor's office. So that was a real great accomplishment and time for me.
I remember Christine Granger. You made me.
Yeah.
That name brought a whole level of memories. And so I'll have to reach out and see how she is doing. Okay.
Yeah.
See if you can dial Tammy. See if Tammy will respond to you. I think she's on to this surprise, and knowing her, she would not want to be the focus of
Yeah,
this
I've been trying. She's not responding. Well, let me see if I can get her on.
Okay. I see D'Angelo Malcolm has joined us. Thank you, sir, for coming. You missed.
I'm gonna mute for a second, and then I'll see if I can get in touch with her. Right.
You missed Reggie Jenkins and Kimberly Hall Wagner. I thought we were going to have an interesting conversation in the interest of good labor management relations. But I'm so glad that you made it on. I appreciate it. What brought you to want to work for, first, you are a staff rep, is that the correct title, for Council 25 of AFSCME, one of our labor partners. And what brought you to this work? What made you want to do this work?
First of all, that's a great question. I appreciate you inviting me here, Marcus. And I will tell you, being able to be here with you and other people who I share as labor partners who, you know, some of the labor partners you get a little rocky with and, you know, you never recover. But what I think I appreciate most about you is your willingness to work and reach across to try to make sure that everybody is treated fairly. And so, you know, I just want to give you the kudos for that, man. And I really appreciate the invite to be here today.
It wouldn't be the same if you didn't come.
I appreciate it. What really got me interested in this, when I used to work at a youth home, I was a liaison with the school district in Redford. And one of my main jobs was to ensure that children were educated properly, who may have been adjudicated, or some who may have just dealt with some different things in their lives that have anywhere from abandonment to being put in foster care and things to that nature. So my job was to ensure that the educational piece would be not forgotten. And so, excuse me, in the midst of that, you know, I worked at a place, and some of the things that I experienced there, from nepotism to people being treated unfairly, kind of was a part of who I am. You know, I don't want to see anybody treated wrong. And so I really kind of got into the labor movement officially then, but my father was a UAW member. And so, you know, I remember him walking the picket lines and things to that nature, just trying to do something that's right, you know, from a social standpoint and an economic standpoint for those people who may not have, be a little bit more disadvantaged, if that makes sense.
I do. And so you got into this work as a staff rep, representing city exclusively? Is that who you're representing, the city exclusively?
No, I actually do. The city is my biggest unit, but I have people all around the state. So I do private sector as well as public.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, arbitration. I do arbitration. I arbitrate cases. But my main purpose is I love to bridge gaps. And so some of the things I've been able to do in this position is a little bit different and a little bit unorthodox, if you will. I bridge gaps. I make things work without having to go and beat a table all the time. My job is to bring people together and not separate them.
That unlock the lever, I would ask you, but I think it's a whole nother show, given the landscape that we're in now, where there have been different theorems on unions, right?
Yeah.
And the power of the union, because many of us have um, experienced and achieved some great opportunities because of the work of unions in partnership with companies. And there would be some that say there has been an assault on that, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd be interested in having some conversation, but maybe post-election, depending on how the Senate and how Congress looks, as to what you think for the future of labor partnerships. Because I think you have done some out of the box and creative things, maybe unorthodox things, that I have certainly appreciated. But in a larger, grander scheme, I'd be interested in hearing, what do you think for the future? But I think I'll save that for another time. We're still trying to get Tammy in, but we got Rodney Bellamy in. And so I just want to talk with the two of you. Private, public, a lot has changed as it relates to the workforce and things that maybe the workforce has enjoyed. What are some of the changes that you have seen over the years, private and or public, from workforce of yesterday to workforce of today, while we're still trying to get Tammy in?
I guess I certainly can take a stab at that. And I would love to come back and have that conversation after the election. And I'll be more than happy to be here. But I will say things have changed dramatically. The workforce is different. I think we have a different type of person who's looking for employment now. I think that this is going to be hard felt for some people because they're not going to be able to understand this, but it's the truth. I have never seen as many W-2s that people have now than they did in the past. It used to be a time when you go to a job, you stick, you stay. That's a thing, that's really hard right now. And I certainly know it's an issue from a management's perspective because, in labor, we feel it as well. And so, but one of the things that I think is that, the workforce has changed, the dynamics have changed. I think people don't have a sense of togetherness and working together all the time. And they feel like, hey, I don't need this. I don't want to make this thing work. I don't want to stay here because I feel like some of the stuff that I'm dealing with, people don't understand me anyway. So, they get up and move. But certainly the dynamics of the workforce has changed. I think that we have people who don't know how to deal with issues. People are not really good at confrontation. Some confrontation is good. You need to know how to deal with it and address it. And I think we deal with a lot of that. And then some people who don't even want to try to work on things and they rather quit than try to work on things. So that's some of it. I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, more than I think you might even know. Today's Passion Friday was originally going to be on conflict management. There's a company called Mersion that does a roundtable, and they kind of do virtual reality where they give people the opportunity to work on conflict management and understand it versus conflict resolution, because I think it's a skill, a competency that a lot of people lack. If you just look at our national climate, conflict management is needed. And so I think people look to conflict resolution because we want to have solutions because we think that we're right? And we think it should be our way. And sometimes we narrowly see a solution as just what we want to get in the end, instead of more broadly conflict management. So I certainly followed that. That was going to be the topic. And then I found out Tammy retired and I said, what? No retirement party. She just kind of, as Tammy would, go off without noise into the horizon. And I just couldn't let that be the case. But yes, thank you for that. And Rodney, what about you? Any thoughts on, I'm sorry.
I just want to say, when you do reschedule the conflict resolution, let me know.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. There's a company that's out west who works with Mersion in partnership. They're an initiative out of Berkeley University. And as soon as Berkeley U, I think, as soon as we get it together so that we can have people will get a chance to do some of the scenarios here live. That's what, we want to be able to do. And people walk away with tools to be able to have conflict management, because conflict is always going to arise. So it's never going to be episodic, just an event. It's normally going to be a series of things. And if you learn, how to manage those series of things, you'll have much more success and maybe be willing to stay in an organization. I wish people would hear that in the city, because there are subcultures and different lines of businesses, there are opportunities for mobility, but unless we branded that way, we won't be able to keep millennials, because they do want to move around. And sometimes the movement is around not being able to manage conflict. But the better we, empower them with those tools, the more successfully they can move throughout our organization. You think of Reggie starting as a typist, and he is now the second deputy commissioner for fire. That's a success story about how someone has navigated through bankruptcy and reductions in force and all kinds of things that could create both external and internal conflict. So that's something that we should be able to use as a strategy to build other opportunities and bridges, like Malcolm said, so that other folks will be able to come in and stay. Better success at retention.
I didn't know if Rodney was going to take a stab at that, but I would certainly like to take a stab at something you just said. Mm-hmm. I think that most of the time we don't really understand what we have in our hands. In other words, we don't even know who we're working with. Mm-hmm. And so we don't take the time to find out who they are and how they're wired. And so because we don't know who they are and how they're wired, then we have a misconception of when we place people in situations and circumstances that they're not even good at. And so if we know who, how you do the DISC assessment, mm-hmm. probably. Mm-hmm. I love this, because it lets you know how people are wired. And, you're putting people in situations, and I dare not venture down this with Marcus, but I'm not going to slide down this. It's even in churches, so I'm going to leave that alone, because, sometimes we put people in situations that we think that they're good at. Just because you were the assistant doesn't mean you're going to be the leader.
Right. And
just because you are the worker who's the person that's the usher doesn't mean that you're not gifted enough to be the one running the service. And so I'll say this to you, that we don't get a chance to know what we're dealing with. And some of the things is we just got to know how to communicate, a lost art of communication, and provide an adequate customer service to, the basics, And so I went to a drive-through one day, man, I was highly dissatisfied at how the people treat you. It's almost like you have to come here. This is like, a person who works in the city, if you're unhappy and you can't articulate why you're unhappy, that's a problem. But it's not always that they can't, that they're just screaming for no reason. It's just that they just don't understand how to articulate what's going on. And so the person who's leading has to understand how to deal with diverse people as well, because we do have a diverse workforce now.
Yeah, very good. Rodney, I'm doubling back to you. I'm sorry. What were you going to share?
I think one of the changes I've seen since I've left city government, but I see it happening every time I land at a well-established organization, there's always employees, high seniority employees who've been there forever, who management is having problems with them because either they don't know how to communicate with the employees, or the employees have their own performance issues, but they've been allowed to become a bigger and bigger issue over the years because the managers don't know how to deal with the employee. Mm-hmm. The employee might have health issues, it might be psychological issues, it might just be performance issues. But every time I land at an organization, I always find myself having to deal with those employees, helping the managers figure out, okay, this person has been with you for 20, 30 years. Why don't you know how to manage them after all this time? Mm-hmm. Then I have to walk the manager through, this is where you failed at, this is what you could have done, this is what you should have done, this is what you can do going forward. And at the same time, as D'Angelo said, helping to learn how to resolve conflict, because the employees know that the managers can't handle them. Conflict builds between the two of them. Both of them need the skill sets to understand how to stay a viable employee, how to learn other skills if necessary, because you can't keep doing the same job for 20, 30 years, and helping the managers understand how to help that employee move from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. How to keep them employed as opposed to how to get rid of that employee. And I see that wherever I land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think both of you have, laid out some pretty important facets of it, which I think, again, could be an entire show in and of itself, right? Better talent management for workforces. And certainly more tenured employees sometimes feel stuck. And sometimes those employees aren't empowered to really get in the line of sight of business because, managers think that that's what they're supposed to do. But if managers move more to the edges and they're able to allow employees that have the knowledge to really drive the business results, they're more likely to feel valued and more likely to buy in and more likely to tell you, open up to tell you and be more transparent once they trust you, what the other issues that might be on the periphery or might be the fulcrum of the challenge or division between that manager and employee. So we don't spend that time, we don't spend those resources in learning and development to have employees reimagine their work and their career and the pathways to what they think is success, right? We don't use those opportunities to make them mentors and take the very best of them and highlight those best things while partnering them with others in their areas of challenge and opportunity to bring those up in those areas, right? That whole theorem around positive psychology that you highlight and push and grow the strengths of an employee, and then you partner them with someone else who is strong in the areas that might be deficits for them. All of those are strategies that employers, for whatever reasons, don't put resources into to deploying. Those are, I think, pretty powerful strategies if you have someone who's been committed to an organization for 30 years. Now, it's true they might be disengaged. They may have quit you at year 27, but because you made that investment, you might owe it to yourself to see what you can get out of that employee in this sunset part of their career. Putting them in a mentorship opportunity might be the change of day for them because it brings value to what they do every day. You want a tenured employee still waking up at 30 years saying, I want to go in. I want the pleasure of being able to do what it is that I do that contributes to the organization. So I think we just see them as sunset employees sometimes, and they're going to be in that position until they decide to leave or whatever happens. And, we might need to reimagine what that sunset time looks like for employees who, might be transitioned. They might be reskilling for a new career. We got people that, work for the city, as you both will know, starting out as early as 19 and 20. They're not ready to stop working. They're ready to reskill to another opportunity. So how do we think more systematically around that so that we move employees to their next great success? So I think that's a whole show, a show and a half.
That's a week.
Yeah, it's a series, right? It's a series to
Marcus,
have a discussion, and I would certainly invite you all back. I know Kurt, Otis, you have to go, but please put on the record your special shout out to Tammy.
All right, I just wanted to shout out to Tammy, my bestie. Congratulate her for her retirement. You've done the time, so take this time to relax, enjoy life. But if you do have that conversation, right? If you do have that conversation, please invite me. Right.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Okay. And D'Angelo and Rodney, I'll give you any time to follow up on those comments, but I also want to give you time to shout out to Tammy, because really the show was to be about Tammy. We might have to come back and bring her back. It was a surprise to her, and I think she surprised us. But I don't want any employee who leaves the city to just go off into the sunset. That might be the way that they want to do it. But I think we owe it to them a thanks, a debt of gratitude. I certainly owe a debt of gratitude to Tammy. She worked on my team when I went to DDOT in a very contentious time as the manager. And she knew the lay of the land, which was key. And she had relationships that she had access to, which was key in anything that I wanted to implement. She knew who to get to when, how, down to timing. We timed emails. I still do that today, but we timed emails at the time that we knew that people would be in the office to open them at a time that would be less contentious for them too. We timed emails around bad news, good news. We had a bad news, good news kind of theory around email. And all of that, I was able to build around Tammy's knowledge, institutional knowledge of DDOT, which cases we should bring to the panel for them to hear for ATU at which time, and what we would be able to sell them and not sell them. And that was critical as a labor relations investigator for her to be able to have that knowledge and be able to say, I think we should hold, we got too many cases that we want yeses on, let's hold back, let's revisit this, let's go lobby some people. She was very good and instrumental in doing that. And so I owe her a debt of gratitude because, you know, it made me look good. And so she was really the one that was driving those results. And so I owe her a debt of gratitude, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to follow up on this whole notion about Workforce Reimagined before we make another show of it, and then your comments on Tammy.
I think my Workforce Reimagined comment will be short. I like the direction that I see workplaces going as regarding the rights of employees. For too long, employers have preferred their management rights where they can make decisions where it didn't take in consideration how it impacts the individual employees. I've always believed my role as an employee labor relations practitioner is I walk that line between helping the managers manage their employees and help the employees manage their managers. Because I've never met a perfect manager. I've never met a perfect employee. So I like how there are more laws that are instituted protecting employees. What troubles me is the political direction that we may be headed into, try to rescind some of those protections. But I'm thankful that we have a lot of HR practitioners and labor advocates who recognize the need for embracing our diverse workforce, making sure that their rights are being represented and protected, and understanding the mission of the organization where we actually work as a team together. So I'm thankful for that. Tammy, I never had the opportunity to work with Tammy directly. She was one of my HR compadres when I was working for the city. I left in 2001 when I left from DDOT. But Tammy and I had the opportunity to have a few conversations offline, comparing notes, what was going on in the health department, what was going on in DDOT, my experience when I was at Water as well. And I've always held her in high esteem. We stayed in contact after I left city employment. I know she is the I won't even call her the queen. She is the dancing guru of all gurus. She can step like no other. So Tammy, I congratulate you on your 34 years of employment.
I gotta make sure I'm right. It's 34 or 33 or 34. I gotta make sure I'm right.
30-something. Okay. Yeah. 30-something years of employment with the city. Congratulations on retiring, and continue your dance, my dear. Continue your dance.
Thank you, Rodney. That was great. And
I'm
D'Angelo.
gonna have to go. D'Angelo, it was good meeting you.
You too.
Marcus, let me know when you schedule the conflict resolution episode.
I will.
All right, all.
Thanks,
Take care.
All right, take care, Rodney. Pleasure. Marcus, you said something I thought was so powerful, man, and we miss it sometimes. And that is this. John Maxwell says that true leadership shares power. You can, if you are a real leader, you can share power. And for you to trust somebody to make sure that they're going to get it done and you don't have to micromanage them. That's a great thing. But I want to say something, you really kind of hit it. If you mentor people, you have a better chance of getting the maximum out of people. People want to know, especially when you're tenured, we don't want to be thrown away. We don't want to be disregarded as, yesterday's news. And so you have to make sure that the transition is good, because you want to make sure that you have something for them to do. Because if they've been there 30 years, now we know some slip, different things happen. But for the most part, a person who's tenured, we're going to say that the 30 years ain't giving you 30 good years or 20 good years or 15 good years. You want to make sure that you let them know that they're valued, because I think that jobs have it, or in places of employment have it kind of wrong. We give in value for value. My mentor always tells me, and I still have a mentor. And so Joseph Wilson is my mentor, and he told me something: always give value for value. If Marcus if he employs me, I'm giving him value. He's going to give me, make sure I get a check in exchange, but I'm going to give him my best. I'm going to give him somebody he can depend on to get things done. And I think sometimes when employees give their best, they're often overlooked because we don't have time sometimes to show them, hey, I really do appreciate you. And sometimes we take those relationships for granted. We could talk about that in another type of form as well, in relationships. But George Bernard Shaw said that youth is wasted on the young. And sometimes we don't really understand the magnitude of what we have at a young age, and we don't really take advantage of. And when I say young, it can be in your 20s, in your 30s, and you don't really understand the magnitude of what you have in order to build a better workforce 20 years down the line, or better business, because, as an entrepreneur as well, building a better business down the line. And so one of the things that I will tell you about business, or what you just said, is being honest with people. And that's what Tammy, she exemplifies that. I think because she's honest, I trust it. I trust her. And I have trusted her for many years, being on the other side of the table, that when we come together, she's not going to lie to me. She may not be able to do what I want, but she'll tell me, D'Angelo, that's not going to happen. I can't do that. And I appreciate that. I like people who are honest, who are open, who can, have honest dialogue. So that means I can take my gloves down and be like, okay, well, what's really going on? Because if Tammy's saying that, if Tammy tells me something, pretty much I'm going to take that to the bank and be like, hey, something's going wrong here, and I really appreciate that about her. And she's very detailed. She makes sure she takes those copious notes. She can remember things. Oh, I remember I had a case that happened years ago, Marcus. I promise. I had lost some of the insight on it. I was talking to her about it, and when I began to talk about it, she was like, boom, nothing in front of her. She can run it down to me. And when she made me remember certain parts that I forgot. And so I would definitely miss that about her. I am super excited for her, though. If anybody deserves to ride off into the sunset, who earned it, she does. She earned it. And the hustle queen. I mean, nobody's going to out hustle Tammy. I remember at our Labor Day, she would come to the Labor Day festivities, and she would hustle and teach people how to hustle. She was the hustle queen. And just so funny, I'll share this with you, Marcus. I didn't know that her family, my family used to live across the street from, some of her family members for years and years. Wow. I never knew that. And when we were talking one day, we began to talk about it. I'm like, wait a minute, you live where? You know who? And then we found out that we were had family that lived right across the street from each other, that knew each other for years. So shout out to you, Tammy. Enjoy retirement. Enjoy it.
Wonderful. And D'Angelo, thank you so much for taking some time to share with us. We're definitely going to have you back on this platform. I believe it is important to have diversity of thought and message, and your service to the city via the labor partnership has been valued, is valued, and certainly we want to hear more from you on this platform. So I'm certainly going to be inviting you back. I appreciate your time today, even though we didn't get Tammy, she surprised us. We're going to make sure that she sees this video, and maybe we'll have a follow-up too. So thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming.
Appreciate you, brother. Be safe, man. Thank you.
All right, you too. Thank you. Well, it is 1:04. We set out to give a shout out. We did give a shout out to Tammy Bell, who recently retired from the city of Detroit after many years of service. And she simply rode off into the sunset, as it were. And I would say to you that wherever you have served and given, as D'Angelo Malcolm said, value for value, where you have poured your heart and your constitution, your personal constitution, your values, the core of your authentic self to an organization for a period of time, and earned your retirement. Congratulations. And it's the hope that Great Places to Work will show that appreciation by putting you in mentorship opportunities, that you can share some of that institutional knowledge, putting you in opportunities where you can lead from the edges and empower people to the middle to bring outcomes and business goals to the customers and citizens that so deserve them. You are valued, you are celebrated, much like we are celebrating Tammy Bell today for her many years of contribution, especially as a labor relations investigator. And you've heard from some of those guests that have joined of her work, her untiring work, her meticulous work, her copious notes, her willingness to broker relationships for the good of the service in the interest of good labor and management relationships and relations. Tammy, we salute you. This was our surprise to you. You surprised us, but we will again give an opportunity to hear from you. But I hope that you will enjoy many, many, many years of retirement and the very best to you on your very best next. I'm Marcus Holmes. This is HR Passion. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Drop in the comments or in the inbox what you love about today's topic or topics in the future that you're passionate about and would like to hear more about. And we will certainly bring those topics forward every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. This is the HR Passion guy saying, have a grateful weekend.